Welcome everyone to the Firing the Man podcast. On today's episode, we discuss how to negotiate with a supplier. Now, the way that we have this episode set up is Ken and I have written down a list of things that have worked for us as we've negotiated with suppliers in our own business. And it is going to be rapid fire pro tips with a little bit of conversation intermixed. Be sure to stay tuned for a book written by an FBI hostage negotiator that is absolutely going to change the game in terms of how you approach negotiations. Ken, what's going on?
David, I'm glad to be in the podcast studio and negotiating with all of my suppliers are Chinese. I know you have some in the U.S., but I like negotiating, and I think it's fun, and it's one of the things that I enjoy. So yeah, this is going to be great. I've been sourcing from China for 3 years. You've been sourcing from China for 4 years. So we just kind of, we just did a brain dump of all the stuff that we've learned, and we're going to do some rapid fire. So let's kick it off. David, what's your first one?
So this is one, and at the beginning of the episode, I mentioned a book, and this book is called Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. And I think everybody in the world should read this book, whether you're involved in business or not. What it does, so he was an FBI hostage negotiator, and his approach to negotiations is excellent. He reminds us, throughout the book that you are dealing with humans, and humans are not always rational. And so this first pro tip is something that I've used in business. It's been something, honestly, that I've used when I'm negotiating with my wife. And that is, give the person that you're negotiating with two choices that you are economically indifferent to. And the reason for this is people like to be in the driver's seat, and they like to have the final say. And this isn't an e-commerce example, but it is a real-life example from my own life. I was negotiating to buy some apartment buildings about 2 months ago. And I told the seller, listen, you need to decrease your price by $5,000 in order to make this deal work. And he was absolutely unwilling to do that. He had a number in his mind. He was not going to go below that. And I said, all right, instead of coming down $5,000, how about you just pay my closing costs, which were $6,000. And so I think that negotiation worked because I gave him two choices: come down $5,000 or pay my closing costs. I was economically indifferent to whatever he chose. Mentally, he had placed more emphasis on the selling price as opposed to the amount of cash that he was going to get out of the deal. And so this is something that I really like to use when I'm dealing with suppliers. Is if I'm angling for something, I would like two things, I will give them options and let them choose their own destiny. What do you think about that?
I really like that. That's it's a good outcome for you either way, right? So no, I like that a lot.
Absolutely. Now, what about you? What's pro tip number one?
Yeah. So before we get into the pro tips, I want to say a little bit I've sourced mainly out of China. And before I get into the pro tips, something that helped me really early on was understanding the Chinese culture and understanding how they do business. And I would recommend to go get two or three books on this, understanding Chinese suppliers and understanding the Chinese culture. And once you kind of educate this podcast, we don't have enough time to go through all of that, but go do that. Learn it, and a lot of this stuff will, it'll pay dividends down the road when you learn more about their culture and how they operate. So number one, always represent yourself as a buying agent with access to capital and from an existing brand or company in the market with sales history. The supplier will respect that and want to do business with you. If you come at it from an angle of, hey, I'm just getting ready to start my company and I'm looking for a product, they don't have time for that. A lot of them don't. If you come in there and say, hey, I'm so-and-so from this company and we sell on this marketplace and we're looking at this volume of orders, they're going to want to do business with you.
Yeah, establish some street cred, as the kids say.
David, what's yours? Next one.
So this next one, because negotiating is just communicating back and forth, I always like to ask, what is your preferred method of communication? And oftentimes in the U.S. that is email. Over in China, oftentimes that's either WeChat, WhatsApp, and because this is a negotiation back and forth in which we're communicating, I want to remove as much friction as possible. And so I will always go to where their preferred method of communication is. It's just, you end up getting faster response times, better responses, and I think that, that's a pretty simple ask of yourself. It's like, all right, I'm going to give a little bit here, and hopefully, as we work through this process, they're going to give a little back. And so that's pro tip number 2.
Nice. Yeah, I like that one. It's you're giving a little bit and for a long-term result. My next one is ask the supplier if there's an MOQ. MOQ is minimum order quantity. It's one of the first things that you're going to want to ask them, especially if you're doing a product launch, initial one. If you're looking for new suppliers, it's probably going to be a product launch. Find out what it is. It's going to help you develop your negotiating strategy further down.
Definitely. My next one is the first offer isn't always the best offer. Price negotiation should be treated like a house purchase. Never accept the first offer put on the table. And I would say that you do need to tread lightly here. Your manufacturer, you want to set up a good relationship with them. And so you probably don't want to beat them down on pricing too much to where you're going to damage that relationship very early on. And so, when I look at my own business, I often tend to the items that are most profitable. And if you put yourselves in the shoes of a manufacturer, they are likely going to tend to the customers that are most profitable for them. And that's what's going to keep them in business. And so I think, negotiate on price, but I wouldn't be, I will not be mean about it or overly aggressive, especially on your first buy. What I will say is oftentimes after I've established credibility with the supplier, when I come back with my second order, I oftentimes will ask for better pricing. I'm not flash in the pan. I am a legitimate business. I do plan on coming back to you for future orders. And usually on that second order, I like to increase my volume a little bit just to let them know that, hey, I'm growing and I anticipate this level of buying that I'm doing from you to continue to increase.
Yeah, I like that. A couple of follow-ups I would like to add on that one. As you educate yourself in the Chinese culture and their process, price negotiation is expected in their culture. So in the Chinese culture, like what you mentioned, David, negotiate the first price is never the best one. It's not, and it's not designed to be. So always have that in mind, that their culture is based off negotiation. So, and another thing that I would like to add to that is what you mentioned. Even further as you get down to the negotiating process, even a years down the road, right after multiple orders, you like the manufacturer, the supplier, they have to make a profit, right? So beating them up too much, like you said, will eat away at profit, and then they just won't want to work with you anymore. Like they have a bottom line. So just respect that, whether you know where that bottom line is or not. If you get to where they're not budging anymore, you might be getting close to that bottom line. And just realize that however of a hard negotiator you are, aggressive like David, just know that there's a bottom line and they need to make profit too. Just respect that. My next one is, I think you already mentioned it, David, is always ask for tiered pricing related to volume orders. So whenever I go into a new supplier, I'm asking, even a seasoned supplier, I still ask them, throw it out there, hey, what is an MOQ? It's 1,000 units. Okay. What's the price for that? It's $5 a unit. Okay, what is your pricing for 5,000, 25,000, and 50,000 units? And then get those pricing. And then I always try to, whatever order I place, I try to use the pricing for the highest volume and just say, oh, my next one is going to be a little bit more. So that's kind of a next level. But yeah, always ask for tiered pricing related to volume.
Definitely. My next negotiating tip is gather quotes from other suppliers. And oftentimes, especially if you're developing a new product, you don't know how much it costs to manufacture. And so if you go out and you get quotes from 5 different manufacturers, you're going to have, outliers. Someone's going to be the low price. Someone's going to be the high price. Someone's going to be able to manufacture that this month. Some people may be backed up 6 months. And so this is an area where you're going to want to do the extra work and gather quotes from other suppliers. One benefit that doesn't necessarily relate to negotiation, but just coming out with a better product, is oftentimes the manufacturer that you're talking about has some level of expertise in either the type of material that you're using or the style of product that you have, and they may give you some helpful suggestions on how to make your product better. Hey, this needs a handle, or hey, this is going to be slippery when it's wet. They have the expertise in the end product and making that end product, and so that's one thing when I'm negotiating or just talking to a supplier is I'll say, here's my design. If you have any suggestions on how to make it better, please let me know. And oftentimes you can pick up some really good nuggets here. Now, what I'll tell you is do not bluff, because the Chinese especially will call your bluff. I have done this where I've said, all right, your price quote is $6 per unit. I've got another manufacturer that will do it for $3 per unit, and they will respond with, well, I suggest that you go and do business with that other supplier. And then you either got to swallow your pride and say, I was lying, or you got to go find somebody else. And so, do the extra work and get quotes from multiple suppliers. All right, Ken, what's next on your list?
So this one is ask for shorter lead times, or you can demand it. You're not going to get them if you don't ask, right? So this kind of plays in a couple of different areas, like especially this year with COVID. If you look back, like March, April, May, like it was, lead times were just crazy. Like some of my suppliers, I can't even get raw material. Some of them were way backed up. But at the end of the day, a supplier has a list of clients that they're making product for, and depending on the value of you, as you alluded to earlier, David, like all the clients have a specific value to the supplier, and if you're low on the totem pole, well, your product's lead time is going to be based on where you fit on that list. So a couple of things I've done, especially with newer suppliers or suppliers that I don't order from very often, I say, hey, I want X amount of lead day, lead time. If they say, hey, it's, this amount of time, I'm like, okay, well, can we improve that? And if they say yes, hold them to that, because a lot of time, like I mentioned earlier, the Chinese culture, the way they operate business, in America and yes, we call it lying. They call it business, right? So they will tell you anything you want to hear. Whatever makes you happy, they will tell you. And then they won't deliver. They might say, yeah, we'll make that 30 days. But actually, they had never intended to have a lead time less than 45 days. They'll just tell you that to get you to go. And you can always build it in like, hey, I want a discount. If you don't meet this lead time of 30 days like you agreed to, I want a 25% discount. If not, I'm going to cancel the order. So you can kind of escalate in that way. But lead times is definitely one, and it really just depends on the supplier. But always ask for shorter lead times. It increases your inventory cycle.
Definitely. My next pro tip kind of mirrors what you just said, and that is to discover areas of mutual gain. And what I mean here, and I'm just going to use an example from a supplier that I've been working with for a couple years, is I have talked to them about lead time, and I want to improve that as much as we can. And one thing that, I want product fast, and they want a little bit of heads up on what my next orders are going to be. And so, we had a discussion, and they said, listen, the way we've been doing it, you send us an order, we see how much material we're going to need, we send that out, and then it may be 3 or 4 weeks till we even get the material back that we can manufacture. And so if you plan on placing an order in a month, let us know, like, approximately how much you're going to be ordering. You don't have to place the order then, but give us some heads up. We can go out and order that material, and then when your order does come in, we can hit the ground running. And that's the area of mutual gain. They want some heads up, and I want my inventory as fast as humanly possible. And so it is not a big deal to me to give them that 1 month heads up. Hey, I'm in stock, things are going well, but I'll probably be ordering in about a month. I'm probably going to order about 1,500 units. Then they can go and get the materials that they need to get ready for your order to come in. So
yeah, I like that one. My next one is let the supplier know up front there's going to be quality inspections by your team during production and pre-shipment. So this has been really helpful. I read a book early on, and the guy that wrote the book he had about 20 years of experience sourcing in China, and he lived in China and worked with all these factories. And one of the things that the Chinese factories are known for is downgrading the raw materials over time. And so, for instance, if they're making jeans, I don't know where that came from, but a pair of jeans, right? They will put less stitching in it because it'll be cheaper. Or the raw material, the actual jean material, they'll, instead of say it's 20 mils thick, they might order a 15 mils thick and save cost on raw materials, but still charge you the same price. But they'll slowly do it over time where you won't notice unless you're highly attentive to the details. The other thing is too, what you agree upon early on in the order. For me, it's a must-have. I always do a pre-shipment inspection and get pictures. I send in my own guys. I hire somebody, whether they're local, go in, do an inspection, send me pictures before I issue the next payment. So and also it's psychological. If you the reason to do this, to tell the supplier up front, is to let them know, hey, shenanigans are not going to be allowed with this client. He's going to be sending in inspections teams and looking at this stuff. So either they will choose not to try to pull shenanigans on you, if that supplier does that. So it's just kind of a hey, heads up,
Definitely. My next pro tip is be genuinely interested in what drives the other side. And I'm going to give another example from a supplier that I work with. My primary contact at this company is not the owner of the company. It's an employee of the company. And she told me that she gets a smaller commission rate for smaller orders, but she gets a higher commission rate for large customers. And so she is incentivized to sell you as much as possible. And so what I did was I had been about every 6 weeks I was placing an order for 2,500 units. And I said, all right, at what point does the commission rate go up? And she's like, well, if you were to double the size of your order, I would get paid a higher commission rate, and I can offer you a higher price, a better price. And I said, all right, I'll tell you what, I will order 5,000 units, but I would like you to ship half of that today and half of it in 6 weeks, when I would be placing my other order. And I got better pricing, but she was able to negotiate with me, give me better pricing, and what I'm interested in is avoiding long-term storage fees. And so if they can warehouse them in China for free and just give me a 6-week pause on shipping them, that's great. There's a zero cost for that. And my primary contact at the company is she gets a higher commission rate, and that is what drives her when she's negotiating with me. And so just understanding that and asking the question, do you get paid a commission rate? Does it vary with quantity? And if you can help them out there, they're going to help you out.
I like that one. Yeah, I've never used that one. I'm gonna have to put that one in my arsenal now.
Yeah, if you don't ask, you don't get.
Exactly, exactly. So I've got a foul one from the last one, and then I'll go into my next one. Well, in terms of letting the supplier know you're going to do pre-shipments and everything, this one is kind of an add-on. Let the supplier know early on in the relationship that if the quality of the raw materials is downgraded without your approval during the life cycle of your relationship with them and your product ordering, you will refuse the shipment. Just like hands down, if the materials are downgraded, the raw materials, you're gonna, without your approval, you'll refuse shipment. Let them know early on. Okay, so the next one, try to negotiate the best terms you can get right out of the gate. And if you're likely not going to get any good terms out of the gate, most likely. But if you don't, then ask them when and how. You know, when would you offer me better terms, and is it over a certain amount of quantity or what? So kind of at least get the roadmap laid out to where if they say on your third order or 6 months, at least then you can pull the trigger with that supplier. So kind of greasing the skids.
Yeah, definitely. My next pro tip is build trust-based influence through the use of tactical empathy. And tactical empathy comes from that book that I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. When you're using tactical empathy, you are appealing to your counterpart's emotions to build rapport, a mutual understanding, influence, and ultimately deals. I'll give an example of this. I had a primary contact at one of my suppliers. She was pregnant, and so it did not take me long to ask, hey, when are you due? How much time are you taking off? And then I said, all right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to place my orders. She was taking 3 months off. I said, I'm going to place my orders in a way that I'm not going to bug you. For the 3 months that you're off spending time with your child, please enjoy that and know that some of your other customers are going to bother you. You're not going to hear a peep from me. Enjoy that time. And I think a lot of times you got to realize that the person on the other side of this is human, and they've got emotions too. And so it did not take a lot of extra heavy lifting in order to not contact her for that 3-month period. But I do think that when my emails come in, rather my WhatsApp messages, she responds quickly because she appreciates that, he was thinking of me and this special time that I was going to have with my baby. And so that's a pro tip. Also, that's just being a good person. I mean, that's the one thing when we talk about negotiating. I think a lot of times people think about like a really aggressive, hard-nosed way to negotiate, but sometimes that turns people off. And just taking interest in what's going on in their life and how you can, how your decisions impact their life. I think that is a very good way to negotiate without acting like a total prick.
Yeah, I like that. And something I've definitely learned over the years is in business, relationships are crucial. And you're highlighting this in a relationship with your supplier. They're people. They might work for the factory, you might be dealing with the factory owner or whatever, but at the end of the day, they're people. And yeah, that's huge. Keep that at top of mind. Now I'm kind of switching the corner here. My next one, it's one of my favorite ones too. It's if negotiations are not going your way, ghost the supplier for 7 to 10 days. And I've used this so many times, and it works a lot of times. And if it doesn't work, you're probably at the bottom of the line of where they have room to work.
Now, Ken, tell me how. So, for some people, they may not be familiar with the term ghosting. So how would you ghost somebody?
Sure. So if I use WeChat for most of my suppliers in China, and so if we're going back and forth, and hey, I'm putting this order in for 1,000 units, and I want you to to put these tags on it and to ship it express, DDP, whatever, and for this price, and then they come back, no, I can only do it for this price, and I go back, no, this price, and they come back and say the same thing. If they repeat what they say, I ghost them, and meaning I don't reply to them on WeChat. for 7 to 10 days. They will, usually it takes about 3 days, 3-4 days, they come back and they'll either come back with an automatic lower price, or they'll come back and ask a question. Would you like us to do something else? Or, then you'll know you're probably at the bottom of the road here with the negotiations. So maybe you can get a quicker lead time or something else like that. So ghosting is just not replying to them on whatever communication medium, whether it's email, WeChat, WhatsApp.
Definitely. My next pro tip is aim to magnify positive emotions. And this is something that I would say, like, generally people like to talk about themselves. I know sometimes I do. I think we're all like guilty of that a little bit.
Yeah.
And so, I do like a little bit of small talk and just to learn a little bit more about the person that I'm talking to. And usually inside of 5 minutes, there's something that's exciting in their life. And it may be work related, it may not be. One thing that comes to mind here is I have, somebody at one of my suppliers that is my primary contact. They're in college and they were studying for a big exam. And they said that this was 2 months. They said, in 2 months, I have a big exam on December 2nd. And so, anytime I'm not working, I'm studying. And so when I hung up with them, I went on my Gmail, I typed up an email that said, good luck on your exam, and then I scheduled it to be sent on December 1st. And, that is something that I think is just going a little bit above and beyond, but I think people appreciate that stuff. They appreciate the little stuff that, hey, he wasn't just making small talk. He really did care what I have going on. And, that's something that, you don't need to put it on your calendar. Just type the email when it's top of mind and forget about it. And, I think they will appreciate it when they receive it, and they won't think, this was auto-sent, or like set up to auto-send 2 months ago. They'll think, that was nice of them to remember. And so, again, we're dealing with humans. We're basically just irrational apes, as Brian Callen says.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've got an add-on to an earlier one, and then I'll get to my next one, which is kind of in line with what you just said. That one that I skimmed over earlier is, if the supplier misses a lead time that you've agreed upon, ask for a discount or extra units. And I had this happen earlier, like we mentioned, the pandemic kind of threw everything out of whack in March and April. We had one of my suppliers I've been ordering from for about 2 years, and they missed they gave me a 45-day lead time, and this was in April, and they missed it. It was a 60-day lead time. So I was super pissed, but I was also understanding that, hey, they couldn't get raw materials, they couldn't get anything. So they said, we missed the lead time by 15 days, so we're going to add, 2,000 extra units on. And that's almost, to them, it's cheaper than a discount because they need to make a certain amount of money, but the raw materials and the labor is super cheap, right? So it was better for them. Same for me. Like, I'm going to sell those and make margin, right? Okay, so the one I wanted to cover, and it's in line with David, a lot of the ones you've highlighted. And I'll just add a little bit of a personal story to it. Be personable and kind. Respect the supplier's culture, and then invite them to meet or visit their factory if possible. Now with COVID, visiting China is not possible probably for another 6 months or so. But I'll give you a story of in 2019, I had one of my suppliers that was on a trip to the U.S. to meet another one of their clients, and I invited them to the city that we're in, and I said, come and meet, and with me being a solopreneur, I don't have an office or a high rise to bring them to, so I rented a conference room at a local hotel, and we had a 2-hour meeting. They brought products, samples, demos, and we just they brought their team of 4. I had my team of 3 there. It was just a really good meeting. And took them out to dinner. It was a great time. Breaking bread. Like, now I have a relationship with that supplier that my terms that I have with that supplier are really, really good. And that added to my bottom line. So just being nice, catering to them, treating them with respect, and breaking bread. That was huge.
Definitely, definitely. My last pro tip as it relates to negotiating is keep an eye out for black swans. And what a black swan is a piece of information that gives you huge leverage. Now, I have been on the lookout for black swan, and I haven't found one, but I look forward to at some point using this. And let me use an example to explain what a black swan is. Say you're ordering from a supplier, and you ask, hey, I will place a huge order with you, but can you store my goods for 6 weeks and only ship half of them? If you were to find a newspaper article that said such and such manufacturing company has doubled its warehouse space, and there was a quote in there that said, yeah, we have a lot of space and we're kind of growing into it, that would be a perfect piece of information that you make the ask. If they don't deliver, you say, hey, that's weird. I read in this newspaper article that you've got tons of space and you're growing into it. And so that's a very specific example. But I would just say, generally be on the lookout for things that can give you leverage in negotiation.
Nice. I like that one. Black Swan. I haven't used that yet. I'll have to add that in. Last one I've got on my list is lets a supplier know you've worked in the space for a long time and you're looking to build a long-term relationship with their factory. Now, this can work and sometimes it doesn't, but if at the end of the day, the factory owner, they're looking for business, right? And if they know they can get a client that's just repeat business scaling along the way, that's huge for them, right? So if you come in and say, listen, I've been in this space, this niche, whatever product you're selling, I've been in this space for X amount of years at this sales volume. We're adding this new product. We're going to ramp up in these different sales channels. Just come at them and say, I want this to be, this has potential to build into a long-term relationship with you. They're going to like that. That's like, hey, that's kind of like the security and hey, multiple orders, repeat orders, something like that. So that was my last one for the wrap up.
Definitely. Well, thanks everyone for listening. I'm going to leave you with a teaser. I have had negotiations that have went very well. I've had a couple that have gone fairly poorly. One in particular stands out, and if you go to Firing the Man on YouTube, you will hear a story about when I was negotiating with an Amish bishop, and he almost punched me in the face. It's a wild story, and you should check it out on our YouTube channel. But anyway, thanks everyone for tuning in this week. And if you have any questions or you have some negotiation tactics that you did not hear us talk about, go to firingtheman.com/
contact us
and leave us a voicemail. Love to hear from you. Thank you.